Good morning, guys. Welcome to my unboxing and review of the Master Grade Jesta Shezarr Type Team B and C version, which I don't know exactly what I'm going to be calling. Probably just the Jesta Shezarr for brevity's sake. I don't know if I will be picking up the Team A version, but this is going to be a premium Bandai exclusive release that came out in 2019 that I got for around $69, which is quite a bit. That's around 50% more expensive than the base Jesta, which you can regularly get for around $45-ish. But I think that is for good reason, because this will come with a lot of extra plastic in the box. This is, of course, going to be the Jesta as it appeared in Gundam Narrative, being part of Operation Phoenix Hunt. The Shezarr team had 6 Jestas split into pairs for teams A, B, and C. Team A was the high mobility type that was supposed to help chase down the Phoenix. Team B and C were sniper teams. So of course the modifications to the Jestas here are going to be extra sensors here in a kind of almost spec ops kind of visor thing that will flip down over its other visor that are mounted on the head. And I think some slightly reinforced armor, as well as some new weapons. You can see this large electromagnetic net gun here being used by one of the 2 members of Team B and C, as well as this other member, which is using the main distinct feature of this kit, being this gigantic beam cannon here, which I'm not exactly sure we'll be able to fit around in my photo booth, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. So of course, in typical B-Bandai fashion, this is just going to be some edited promo material for the Jesta Shezarr Type Team B and C here, with both members of the team, one with the net gun, one with the big rifle here, in a monochrome extremely dark gray, almost black color, which is of course the main armor tone for the Jesta. And in typical P-Bandai fashion, there's going to be pretty much nothing on the sides of the box. So let's get right into it. Inside the box, you will get 9 bags of runners, which does seem about right. The Jesta, while being a kind of limited production spec ops unit, is still a grunt suit at the end of the day, so it is going to be slightly simplified, and this is going to be heavily borrowing from the base Master Grade Jesta kit that released in 2013. Of course, in addition to that, you will be getting this standard style Master Grade manual here with the box art here in full color, showing off both members of the Jesta Shezarr type in Team B or C. On the back here, you will be getting your decal guide, which is going to be fairly limited. I'm pretty sure you are not going to be getting water slides in this kit. Yeah, you are going to be getting sticker style decals, a little bit unfortunate given the dark color scheme of the Jesta here, as well as some dry transfer decals, which I'm personally fine with. I know some people have trouble with dry transfers, but I don't find them to be that big of an issue, and they should look pretty good on this kit. Of course, on the bottom here, you will be getting your color guide in both English and Japanese in full color. The Jesta here is going to use a relatively simple color scheme, only consisting of 6 colors, and this is mostly going to be a kind of somber dark color tone, which almost brings to mind kind of like a SWAT officer or something like that. It's very kind of like heavy-duty police-like in terms of color scheme, which is a little bit interesting for the Jesta. You will, of course, be getting your parts list here with a ton of runners here for the Jesta. Love to see it. And because this is going to be heavily based on a slightly older Master Grade in the 2013 Jesta, this will be making use of some polycap joints, although it does look like you are not going to be using the majority of these polycaps. In addition, you'll be using this ABS kind of fully articulated hand setup, so we will see how those handle the weapons of this kit. You get a simplified build order here on the left, and then move on to the right with your build order, starting with the torso, starting as per usual with the cockpit here with your seated pilot figure. Start building up the torso, tons of frame layering as you would expect from a Master Grade, a complete inner frame. This thing should be building up quite nicely here. So yeah, lots of layering. I do really love how the Jesta looks. I'm very much looking forward to this design, and I'm taking a look at this one first before the Gym Command Space Type. I want to get this out of the way first because my spring semester starts, I think, next week, or this week by the time you see this video. So I'm not exactly sure how much time I'm going to have, so I wanted to get this out of the way because I knew this was going to be large and kind of involved, so I wanted to make sure I had it done. So of course you get your head here with the new kind of extra sensors here mounted on the forehead in this kind of special flip down visor thing, with part K1 here acting as the new special sensor. Of course, fully complete your head with a decent amount of layering. Get into your arms here, which is going to be relatively simple, but should still do the job quite nicely and look very good. Talking about cutting out the hands, which I'm a little bit concerned about. These fully articulated hands can be a bit of an issue, but we'll see how it works out, especially with the giant beam rifle that this kit has. I think it shouldn't be that big of a deal because most of the weight of the rifle is going to be bounced on a tripod. I don't think most of it is going to go on the hands, so it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Of course, assemble your left arm, which is going to be the same as the right. Build up your upper body here. Move on to your waist, which is going to be relatively simple, but still has enough layering to sink your teeth into and give a fairly robust build. Assemble your skirt armor and put them on. Move on to your legs here with a ton of different frame layering. You are going to be seeing polycaps used in the feet for heel-toe separation, but I think that shouldn't be that big of an issue. Tons of layering in the feet, very nice. Move on to your ankle armor. Let's start assembling your legs here, starting with the knee joint, and then you're going to build up your leg around the knee joint with all this really nice frame detailing and stuff before you start putting the armor onto the kit. So a very typical Master Grade stuff. Very much looking forward to this. I haven't built a Master Grade since August with the Master Grade Gundam F80. I've just been a bit busy and haven't had time to kind of sink my teeth into a Master Grade build, so very much looking forward to coming back with this one here. So, of course, build up your side skirts here. I think I have a grenade rack inside of the side skirts. Fully assemble your Jesta there. Move on to the backpack, which is going to be, I think, slightly reinforced for the Jesta Shezarr type. I will have to double check, but actually, yeah, this does look mostly like the normal Jesta backpack, so I may be a little bit wrong on that. But yeah, of course, assemble your backpack. You have a mostly normal Jesta here. Get into the handheld weapons, including a single beam saber, the Jesta shield over there that has some missiles built into it, the electromagnetic net gun, and the beam rifle. So yeah, you have your Jesta beam rifle here, which is mostly two halves of sandwiched together with some extra auxiliary parts that mount onto it. And I think it's kind of interesting that's taking inspiration from more kind of real life rifles. This looks very modern military-like with a more modern kind of like scope that goes on it and a suppressor and a foregrip and all that make this look very kind of spec ops. You get your capture gun here, which is very simple, literally two halves of sandwiched together. Your beam saber here, quite simple as you would expect. And then your shield here, which is going to have some layering to facilitate all of these like kind of grenade launchers that mount on it and all these accent detailing. And of course the joints, because this is going to be mounted on a kind of sub-arm that goes on the backpack so it can swing out and maneuver about and things like that. You can store some spare magazines on the forearms. And talking about articulation gimmicks with the rifle, storing the rifle using the capture gun, and of course moving the shield around. Some more articulation gimmicks here with the sub-arm for the shield, using your action-based adapter, using a kind of hip rotation mechanism, which is a little bit odd. This is a new kind of shape. I haven't seen that one before. The legs can slide down to expand your knee articulation, and then you get onto the Mega Beam Launcher, the main signature feature of this kit, with this absolutely gargantuan rifle here that needs to have its own tripod. And yeah, this thing is going to be huge and layer up quite nicely. This is just the tripod here, and it does look like it is going to be robust enough to hold up the rifle, no problem. Assemble your rifle here, which is going to be relatively simple, but should still do the job nicely. I don't think it's too complex in terms of color scheme and things like that, so it should still look pretty good and be mostly accurate at the end of the build. Assemble your tripod, mount the gun on it, and then talk about having the Jesta actually hold on to the gun here in a kneeling pose. And talking about all the articulation you have here with the tripod legs and how they can swing out and things like that. And then showing opening up the cockpit hatch gimmick, and then talking about the LED battery system here, so you can't have the light kind of pipe up through the Jesta's face, which is cool. I don't think I have the batteries for it, so you won't be seeing the LED system in this kit here. And I think I remember seeing that even on the base Jesta with the LEDs, it didn't shine through the face all that well, and it was a little bit dim. But I'm not exactly sure about that, and you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Again, I will not be testing it in this video. As for the contents of the bags, so inside the bags you will be getting 23 runners, which is quite a lot and is helping justify the cost a bit. In addition to this bag here, which will have your color correcting stickers here, mostly for camera details for all across this kit, as well as two accent parts for, I think, the chest. You will also be getting your sticker style decals and your dry transfers inside this bag. As for the runners themselves, so these runners were printed in October of 2025, starting with runner PC-130 here for a set of 1/100 scale polycap joints. We are not going to be using the majority of these joints, but the few that will be used I don't suspect will be a problem because the Jesta isn't super geometrically over the top, and that big rifle that it has, I don't think we'll be using any polycaps and will be supported on its own on the tripod. So I don't think the Jesta will have to support too much weight on these polycap joints that it is going to be using. Starting with runners from the original Master Grade Jesta from 2013, runner A here is going to be a multicolor runner coming in 3 different colors. The vast majority of this kit is going to be in a Navy Titans blue for a ton of armor parts seen throughout this kit, including parts for things like the backs of the hands. You get parts for your shield over here, parts for your torso here, parts for your head over here, parts for your shoulders, I believe, etc. You will see yellow down here for a couple of accent parts, including a Federation cross that I think is going to go in the shield. I might be mistaken on that, as well as the Federation V that will go in the crotch. You will also get 2 parts in gray for the 2 missile pods that are going to be stored inside the shield, so the missiles will be color separated, which is nice. Runner B here in that navy blue, that is the main tone of runner A, going to contain much more of the other armor parts seen throughout this kit. Okay, so that Federation kind of anchor will be in the shield over here because that's what this part is for. We'll be seeing parts for things like the back of the torso, the front of the torso, parts for the backpack here, the kind of, I think, tops of the torso that will wrap around the shoulders, some parts for skirt armor over here, etc. Runner C in a blue-gray color here, going to contain some accent parts for things like your joint caps, some accent parts kind of surrounding sub-thrusters of ventilation and skirt armor, your beam saber over here, parts for your arms here, the forehead armor here, your standing and seated pilot figures. Very nice that we will have a standing pilot figure in here. Bit of a shame that that's been omitted from more recent releases. A kind of almost power piping frame detail here that I think will end up linking the torso and the waist, etc. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you'll be getting 2 of Runner C. Oops. They're going to be identical, except this Runner C is going to be in a much lighter desaturated blue-gray color here, just for better color accuracy. So this Master Grade is doing the duplicate runners thing for better color accuracy, which is nice. Runner D here in a primer frame gray, going to contain a number of frame and joint parts used throughout this kit, including parts for the top of the torso here, the front and back of the torso here, the sides of your leg armor up here, parts for your skirt armor at the ends here, the handle for the shield, the inner frame part for the shield, that circle kind of track thing that will be used for hip articulation, etc. Runner E here in a primer frame gray, going to contain a number of auxiliary parts for this kit, including the 2 halves of your beam rifle, all of the magazines for said beam rifle, the grenade pods that are going to go on the side skirts, the suppressor for the beam rifle, some joint parts including parts for, I believe, the waist over here, some cuffs for, I think, the wrist, some joints for either the shoulders or the tops of the legs going into the waist. I'm pretty sure these are the shoulder joints, etc. Runners F1 and F2 in a primer frame gray with this top part shared between them. The shared parts will include frame parts for things like your shoulders, frame parts for your knees, frame parts for your feet. The not shared part in Runner F1 will be frame parts for things like, I believe, your backpack over here, your waist armor here for the sides of the waist, the top of the waist, your foregrip here for your beam rifle, etc. You'll be getting 2 of Runner G in a navy blue for more armor parts for throughout this kit, including parts for things like your feet, the front of the shin armor, your ankle armor, some extra armor for like either the thighs or the knees or something like that, more parts for the bottoms of the feet over here, and I think over here, etc. Runners H1 and H2 in a primer frame gray containing yet more frame parts. Some frame parts here for, I believe, the upper arms, some parts for, I think, ankle armor down here, the joints for the legs going into the waist, your action base adapter up here, some more armor here, I think this is for your forearms, etc. All right, so getting into new runners for the Shezarr Team Jesta here. Runners J1 and J2 here in a primer frame gray is mostly going to contain parts for things like the 2 parts for the capture gun over here, as well as parts for the Mega Beam launcher, mostly parts for the tripod here, with J2 being a duplicated part here for some tripod legs. So yeah, you see parts like the 2 halves of the tripod over here, parts for your gun up here and down here. So yeah, this should layer up to be quite substantial and be quite nice to pose with. Oh, I almost forgot, still from the base Jesta, you get runners I1 and I2 here for your clear parts for sensor details and the visor in the head. Runner I1 is going to be in a plain clear, runner I2 is going to be in an orange clear. So there's going to be some layering up of orange parts on top of clear parts, so we will see how that looks on the finished kit. Runners K1 and K2 going to contain some extra accent parts for the Shezarr Jesta here, for all of the extra parts for the armor. So you get some reinforced armor here on the top of the torso, as well as the modified armor for the head, including that special kind of flip down enhanced sensor thing that can go down over the visor. Runner L is going to be a multicolored runner coming in 3 different colors. You get a white here for some various accent parts for, I think, the Mega Beam launcher. Speaking of the Mega Beam launcher, you get most of the parts for it right here in a slightly navy blue tinted primer frame gray, which should look quite nice. And you get clear green here for the sensors for the Mega Beam launcher. Runner N in a primer frame gray ABS, going to contain a number of auxiliary parts here for the Mega Beam launcher, I believe. Not exactly sure where these are all going to be used. So runner MP1 here in a primer frame gray ABS here is going to be used for the fully articulated Master Grade hands. These have been very hit or miss in the past. I think they'll be fine here with the Jesta, but we will see after the build. And lastly, get runner SB1 here for a set of 1/100 scale beam saber effect parts in clear pink. So these should do the job fine with the single beam saber that comes with the Jesta here. You will not be able to use both of them. So yeah, these are beam saber effects. We've seen them a million times before and they do the job fine. So yeah, overall a ton of parts for the Shezarr Jesta here that should lead to a very nice, incredibly involved build. So I will see you after that build. All right, welcome back. Here is the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta, snap built, panel lined, lightly painted, and I did hit it with a little bit of a buff with a gun primer matte balancer across many of the navy blue and blue gray parts, just because there was some swirling in the plastic, as is apparent in many dark colored plastics in Gunpla, but not as bad as the Jim Sloop from a couple of videos ago. I did not use any of the included sticker style or dry transfer decals because I do intend to get water slides for this at some point, and you've seen enough of the sticker style decals on these dark colors to know that they will look pretty bad on the Jesta here, being predominantly in navy blue. The dry transfers should look a little bit better, but not quite as good as water slides do. But getting right into the build, I do need to correct a couple of things from the unboxing section that I found out later that I said were incorrect. So runners N and L are not actually new for this kit. Runner N was the one, I think, ABS runner that was included in this box. Runner L is the runner that includes parts for the Mega Beam launcher on the tripod. So both of those are actually from the ReZEL Commander unit from 2010, which is actually congruous with the lore of this design, where the big gun on the turret is actually the same one used by the ReZEL Commander unit and the tripod is new. So the only new parts that will come in this box are going to be the alternate kind of scope part for the head, an alternate armor piece for the top of the torso, and that tripod for the Mega Beam launcher. So one more thing to correct is that Team B is the sniper team and Team Z is the capture team with the net gun. I was under the impression that they were identical and each team had one sniper and one capture person, but no, they are split up into a sniper team and a capture team. But getting right into the build, this is going to be fairly typical for a Master Grade build from about 10 years ago, where there's plenty of layering, a very nicely detailed inner frame, things layer up amazingly, and it is a very nice, robust build. This kit does use polycaps, but they are not really an issue in most places. It may become an issue in the ankles if you want to have it in a one-legged pose, but you'll see that later in the posing section. So apart from those ankle polycaps that may be potentially being problematic, after a while after assembly, the use of polycaps in this kit is really kind of a non-issue. The main issue that I had in terms of the build are going to be with the hands, of course, with the fully articulated, almost advanced MS joint style hands that Master Grades had for a while. Those hands are pretty rough. They are certainly worse than something like the Master Grade Arc 78-2 2.0, where those hands were mostly articulated, but all of the parts came on the runner. Here, these fully articulated ABS hands that very much feel like the advanced MS joint are very fragile and rough to deal with, and the fingers do tend to pop out very easily if you try to bend them at any point. Getting them into natural poses without the fingers popping out is a little bit annoying, and if it proves to be an issue during the posing section, I do have a disc bay joint strengthening pen on standby, and I will be thickening up those ball joints to hopefully get them to stay in their sockets, but I'll let you know if I do that in the posing section. But yeah, the hands are by far the only really frustrating part of this kit that's very annoying to deal with, and apart from that, the build is amazing with tons of armor, layering a very detailed inner frame as you would expect from a Master Grade, an incredibly pleasant build, one that will take you a substantial amount of time, so make sure to allocate at least a weekend to this kit. Likely you will need more if you want to make the most out of what's in this box here. This is a very excellent build. This will also apply to the base Jesta because, well, the Jesta here is almost identical to the base Master Grade Jesta in terms of construction. It just has a slightly different construction in the head, and apart from that, it is going to be pretty much identical. So the base Jesta is also an incredibly solid build, just like the Jesta Shezarr here. So coming back to this kit in the booth, getting into aesthetics, now as per usual, I will talk about any color correcting stickers I used on this kit, any details you will need to paint in yourself before I talk about my opinions on this design. So stickers 1 and 2 are going to be the only non-kind of camera or sensor metallic stickers that are going to be used on the mobile suit itself, with them being these two light blue parts here in the chest. The parts underneath I believe are going to be in a navy blue, so yeah, these stickers do look fine on this part, and it's also an easy enough part to paint in yourself if you want to do that, but these stickers look fine. Sticker 3 is going to be on the Mega Beam launcher for this very long sensor detail here at the center of the weapon. Sticker 4 is going to be for a circular metallic green sensor detail that goes behind a clear green piece here for this auxiliary sensor that the Jesta's head will be kind of behind when it's sniping with it. Sticker 5 is going to be on the auxiliary sensor unit on top of the Jesta's forehead for this metallic pink sensor here on this flip down sight that goes over the head. Sticker 6 is going to be for the red rectangle here that goes on the capture gun, so that part isn't metallic, but it is still an easy enough detail to paint in yourself if you want to, and it looks fine if you decide not to. Sticker 7 is going to be for this auxiliary sensor detail here on the side of the head on this part underneath the antenna. And stickers 8 and 9 are going to be for the capture gun for the front and the back of the sight here in a metallic green. So pretty understandable details for the most part, being mostly sensor details, a couple of color correcting details on the chest, and one red color correcting detail here on the capture gun. As for parts you need to paint in yourself, of course on the capture gun here, this is just two pieces that are sandwiched together. Apart from those stickers, this thing is entirely in a primer frame gray. So you will need to paint in this barrel here that contains the electromagnetic net that this kit will be using to capture the Phoenix in the same blue-gray that is on this kit. I don't have that color, so I just used Disbay's Mecha Gray paint marker for this kind of slightly purple tinted gray, which I do think accomplishes the job very nicely of getting this very nice kind of color separation for the barrel here in the capture gun. Apart from that, the only details you will need to paint in are some very minor details on the kit itself. Some of the parts that you will need to paint for color accuracy are going to be these small yellow accents here on the bottoms of the feet near the front here. Used a Disbay Mecha Yellow paint marker for that. And the thrusters in the backpack here, the insides need to be painted in white. Used a Disbay white paint marker for that. So apart from that, the only things I painted in are going to be some little accent details. So things like this auxiliary sight here on the enhancement sight on the forehead, this little auxiliary circle I painted in with a drop of metallic green paint. To be color accurate, you don't need to do that, but I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be, and it didn't look quite right unpainted, so I put a little drop of metallic green to help it pop. And of course, behind the visor, that clear part I painted in a metallic chrome to help that mono eye part stand out behind the orange visor. I think it looks really good. If you're getting the LED unit, do not do that because that part is clear for the light to be piped through the clear part. But if you don't have the LED unit and don't plan to get it like I do, just paint it in chrome to help it catch the light a little bit better behind the visor there. So yeah, overall color accuracy on the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta is relatively good, only needing a couple of minor details on the base mobile suit itself to be painted in. But of course, the main disappointment is going to be in the capture gun, with a large portion of it needing to be painted in yourself to be color accurate. So as for my opinions on this design, the Jesta is a little bit divisive because I think a lot of people in the kind of Gundam community don't really like it when the mobile suits get a little bit too humanoid for their tastes. Things like the Jesta and the Gira Zulu are a step too far for some people, with the Jesta being very kind of Spec Ops humanoid-like, to the point where the beam rifle very much resembles a contemporary modern firearm. But in general, I do really like the very Spec Ops look of the Jesta here. I do like the much darker color scheme, the very kind of detailed blocky geometry all over the kit that helps it look more elite, more kind of, again, Spec Ops, and more of a high mobility kind of escort unit here that does look really cool. I do like that they didn't go too overboard in terms of geometry on this kit, with things like the backpack here kind of hugging very close into the base Jesta. I do like the auxiliary sight, but it is a little bit weird, like some people point out. That kind of resembles real-life auxiliary night vision sights and things like that that mount onto helmets. I don't know exactly what they're called, but yeah, that is a little bit weird. But I like the way the kind of shield mounts onto the backpack there, where it's kind of practically defending the Jesta and how it can swing out and be used as like a missile launcher or things like that. That part is really cool. See, I do really like the very kind of Spec Ops look of the Jesta here. I do very much like the way it's executed, and I like the color scheme of the Shezarr team a little bit better than the base Jesta. The use of things like light blues and blue grays to kind of break up the otherwise very kind of dark navy blue and very dark gray color scheme of the base Jesta is appreciated. So I do like this slightly more colorful take on the Jesta, and I do really like how it looks here. One other thing to point out that I got wrong at the unboxing is that the B and C Jesta Shezarr type is basically identical to the base Jesta, apart from that flip down sight on the forehead. The things I was thinking where it has slightly reinforced armor and a slightly bulkier backpack, I think that was the difference in perspective and art style for the concept art for the two, because while the concept art for the base Jesta was from Unicorn and the one for the Jesta Shezarr team was from Narrative, so the perspective's a little bit different, and that does mean the proportions on the concept art were a little bit more squashed and blocky on the Narrative version. So yeah, that was a misinterpretation on my part of the art. The actual like units themselves are basically identical to the base Jestas, apart from a slight color swap, and of course that flip down sight in the forehead. So for a quick size comparison, here is the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta Team B and C version, next to standard sized high grade, the Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a standard sized Master Grade being the Gym Sniper 2 White Dingo team. So as you can see here, the Jesta is going to stand significantly taller than your average Master Grade. In universe, the Jestas stand at I think like 19.3 meters tall. That does put them moderately taller than your standard 18 meter tall high grade. So this kit will be taking up more space on your shelf just for the base mobile suit, and of course, if you decide to pose it with the Mega Beam Launcher, this kit will take up an absolutely gargantuan amount of space on your shelf. Proportionally, as you'll see in a moment, the Mega Beam Launcher compared to the Jesta is about the same as the high-grade Big Gun is to the Zaku, so yeah, you'll see that in a moment. So for your accessories, here's the Master Grade Shezarr Team B and C version with everything it comes with, and as you can see, massive accessory spread, and of course the Mega Beam Launcher here is absolutely gigantic. So getting into the accessories that would have come with the standard Jesta, of course for your hand options, you will get the two fully articulated hands you see on the kit right now. Like I said in the build section, they are a little bit annoying to work with, and the fingers have a very nasty tendency to just kind of pop off as you're working with the hands, and I really would have preferred a bunch of fixed pose hands to use with this kit, but they are what they are, and you can't get them to fairly natural poses if you have a bit of patience working with them. Of course, for your basic melee armament, mounted on the back of the Jesta's left forearm, you have this beam saber here in blue-gray, and you get a second beam saber here in light blue. The Jesta is only supposed to have one beam saber, but it comes with the second one if you want to have it dual-wielding beam sabers, but this one is not supposed to be used with the kit. For use with the beam sabers, you will of course get these two standard 1/100 scale beam saber effect parts in clear pink, which will do the job fine. For your adapters, you will get this action base adapter here, very standard for master grades. You will get two standing pilot figures, one in blue-gray, one in light blue, just for a sense of scale to show how big you would be if you stood next to the Jesta. So I always like when these are included. It's a bit of a shame that modern master grades seem to be kind of getting rid of them in some cases. So for your main defensive armament, you will of course have the shield here mounted on a subarm on the backpack with some missiles mounted in them, and a handle on the underside for the Jesta to grip to get a more dynamic defensive pose out of the shield. For your main ranged weapon, you have the Jesta's signature beam rifle here, very unique looking, very kind of contemporary firearm like I said earlier. It's a little bit weird, right? You have this like very large suppressor looking thing on the front. In universe, I think it's like an accelerator unit to help the beams move faster or something like that. It's a little bit odd, and I guess it's a way to explain in universe why this beam rifle has a suppressor. It has a very kind of EOTech like hollow sight looking scope here on the top, which is very weird to see on a mech gun. You of course have this foregrip here, no complaints. Plenty of beam rifles have secondary handles here. It can rotate around and swing out back and forth as you would expect. The magazine is removable. Again, another weird part where this looks so much like a contemporary, almost like assault rifle, and the magazine is so tiny compared to it, which looks a little bit proportionally awkward. But you will of course get 3 spare magazines mounted on the back of the Jesta's right forearm. But yeah, you can pose the Jesta like it's reloading or things like that. Apart from the articulation I just showed off, no articulation used in the beam rifle. It's very unique and kind of iconic for the Jesta, but just personally I find the look of it to be a little bit weird to how like contemporary firearm it looks. As for new accessories for the Shezarr Jesta here, you will of course get the capture gun for the Team C variant, which is a little bit disappointing, again being 2 halves sandwiched together. You have a secondary handle down here that does not articulate, and of course it being 2 halves sandwiched together will have a very nasty seam line running down the middle of the entire weapon. So depending on who you are, that may be a little bit annoying to you, but yeah, this gun does look a little bit goofy. You'll be seeing it in the posing section, but this isn't really something I would want to use to pose with my Jesta. For something I would want to use to pose with the Jesta, here is the Mega Beam Launcher, and as you can see, this thing absolutely gargantuan. It dwarfs the Jesta in size, and this thing is absolutely gigantic and will take up a ton of space on your shelf. So yeah, this will definitely be giving the Shezarr Jesta most of its presence, and also maybe a little bit annoying depending on how much space you have to display your kits. This will take up a ton of room. So yeah, very large, impressive weapon, and the actual weapon itself does look very much like an oversized version of the ReZEL's beam rifle. This is the exact same one that would have been included with the ReZEL Commander version. It is on a subarm. You're not supposed to use it with this kit. That subarm is presumably for kind of angling it on the ReZEL Commander type. Here it's just kind of mounted onto a tripod. You're not supposed to use that subarm. The Jesta will actually grip onto this auxiliary part here that can swing up and down, and of course it is going to be on a tripod where the legs can slide down and kind of angle out, and the feet can angle around as you would expect. So yeah, no matter what kind of terrain you're going to have the kit posed in like a diorama or anything like that, or on your shelf, you should be able to get the Mega Beam Launcher here in a very natural firing pose. And there's some very nice color separation of the beam launcher with things like these white power piping details here actually being part separated off the runner, which is quite nice. And there's a little bit of subtle contrast with the slightly blue tinted gray of the actual Mega Beam Launcher itself, as well as the plain primer gray of the tripod here. So very cool weapon, very much the main reason you would want to pick this kit up, being the main accessory of the Jesta Shezarr Type Team B version. So yeah, a very complete accessory spread for the Jesta Shezarr Type here. Nothing really to complain about, and all the accessories are represented fairly well here. So getting to articulation, starting as per usual with the head. For an upward look, you can get a very nice upward look out of the Jesta Shezarr Type. For a downward look, you can get a slight downward mean glare. You get some fairly decent side to side tilt. You can of course 360 the head about a ball joint, and this flip down sight, as you would expect from me calling it a flip down sight, can flip up and down as necessary. Just be careful as you do so because the connection is a little bit fragile. You can see there's a bit of a stress mark here just from me moving it up and down a few times before filming. In the shoulders then, for a shoulder swing, this joint will pop out of the torso to give about a 45-degree shoulder swing. You do of course get 360 rotation in the arm. Just be careful on the left side because of this subarm here. It can't actually fully rotate even though the joint is capable of it. The shoulder armor can't flip up independently of the arm to facilitate. Just under a 135-degree side raise. A double bend in the elbow will give you almost a full 180-degree bend, which is quite nice. The handle for the beam saber here is kind of like held in place by these 2 little clasps. You can flip one clasp up, and the handle for the beam saber can flip out like so. The wrists are of course going to be ball joints, which will do ball joint things. You do have a little bit of kind of extension gimmicks here with the wrist ball joint also being on a hinge. You can see what I was talking about just from moving the hand a little bit, one of the fingers popped out. Each of the fingers are going to be fully articulated with 4 different joints, a ball joint at the base, a hinge in addition to that, which allows the fingers to move a little bit more naturally, and 2 knuckle joints here along the fingers. It is very annoying and difficult to articulate without having the fingers fall out of the hands, but if you've seen these hands before, you'll know exactly how they articulate. You're able to get some very natural looking posing out of them, but it is very annoying to do so. In the torso then, for a forward ab crunch, you do get a minor forward ab crunch with this very thick kind of torso cockpit armor colliding with this power piping detail in the hip very easily. You do get a fairly decent backwards ab crunch. You get some minor side to side crunch. The torso cannot 360 in its socket. You are limited to at most about 45 degrees to either side. To open the cockpit hatch here, the lower assembly will kind of slide out. It's very difficult and annoying to get to, but yeah. So this lower part will slide out, flip down. This upper part will open up a little bit, and you have access to your cockpit with your seated pilot figure in there. So yeah, a little bit annoying to actually fully articulate, but of course being a Master Grade, this does have a cockpit opening gimmick. In the backpack then, these thrusters can flip backwards to show the Jesta having a more kind of mobile aerial pose, which is cool. And of course the shield is going to be on a subarm, which will do subarm things. When not in use, the subarm will kind of clip together in this more compact state, but you can of course unclip it to allow the shield to swing around and get in any angle you could possibly want, and the shield can also mount on the other side if you want. The shield, of course, also has a secondary handle here, which can flip out, depending on if you want the Jesta to grab onto it. In the waist then, the front skirts are on individual ball joints that can flip up 180 degrees. The side skirts are on individual joints, which can flip up about 45 degrees. These doors for the grenade racks in the side skirts can also flip down like so if you want to pose the Jesta either reaching for one or launching it out of the side skirt. The back skirts are also on individual ball joints and can flip up about 45 degrees. The legs do have a hip drop mechanism like you saw in the manual, this very unique kind of circular mechanism that can kind of swing any which way you want. In practice, it's a little bit difficult to actually get it rotated around. You can see doing this to drop it down, pop the back skirt out, which is a little bit annoying, but it should allow for a much wider range of articulation than it otherwise would have. For front kicks, if you articulate the hip drop, you can get a little bit more than 90 degrees. You can get just under 90 degrees of side kick before the side skirts will pop out, and you can get about 75 degrees of back kick before you'll pop the back skirts out. You do get some rotation in the upper thigh, about 45 degrees outward, and a little bit under that inward. The knee does have a double bend, but you can't fully articulate it unless you pull the leg down to enhance your knee bend, in which case you will get a full 135 degree bend before the lower leg will collide with the thigh. The ankle armor here can flip up and down a little bit like so. There is heel-toe separation that allows for a moderate upward tilt and no downward tilt. For your overall foot articulation, overall toe dips, you get a moderate toe dip there. For overall toe raises, you get a very nice upward toe raise. You get almost 90 degrees of tilt to either side, and you cannot 360 the foot. You are limited to about 45 degrees to either side. So in general, the Shezarr Jesta here does have a decent amount of articulation that should allow it to pull off most of the poses you would want, and definitely more than you need to get it into any kind of pose with the Mega Beam Launcher. So speaking of which, let's see this kit in some poses. So getting the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta Team B and C version into a spin, starting with the usual running and gunning pose. And before I start talking about the pose, just one thing. As I suspected going into this, the biggest issue that I had with posing was getting the hands to cooperate. In most poses it was very annoying, and just moving the fingers would often cause them to just pop out of their sockets. So I did end up having to drill in the sockets for the left hand, the middle two fingers, using a 2mm pin vise just to get those sockets in deep enough where the ball would actually sit reliably inside of them, so that maybe a modification you may need to look into doing if your fingers kept popping off like mine did. Afterwards, it still did pop off, but it was easier to get them back into the socket, and they stayed in the socket more easily than before modification. So yeah, if your fingers prove to be a problem, take a 2mm pin vise to it, just drill through a little bit to the kind of cavity where the tab in the hand is to hold onto the weapons. But this pose shows off a couple of things. One, I'm very surprised that this kit can even pull off a running and gunning pose. I figured the polycap ankles would prove to be a bit of an issue and the weight of this kit would cause it to topple over, but no, this kit can pull off a one-legged running and gunning pose with the leg it is standing on like fully bent to give a bit more of an indication of running, so the lower half of the body actually cooperates fairly well with getting this kind of running pose. Where this kit doesn't quite cooperate is in the upper half. Like I mentioned earlier, because of the hands being an issue in posing, getting the weapon to move in a kind of believable, very dynamic looking way in a mobile pose isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world, and with the beam rifle here, the most I could get is a kind of trotting hip fire pose where it's firing off to the side with the beam rifle. So I think the beam rifle does look at its best in a two-handed pose, again emphasizing the kind of deliberate tactical nature of the Jesta here. I don't think it necessarily looks the greatest in a running pose. It would look pretty good in a kneeling pose or in a standing kind of stabilized pose with the shield out in front of it protecting it while it fires, but as it is here with the beam rifle, I don't think I would pose the Jesta here in a running and gunning pose, particularly because the Shezarr Jesta was being used in Operation Phoenix Hunt, so realistically you would probably want to have it like kind of posed as if it's flying around space, or if you do have to have it standing, maybe a diorama where it's standing on debris or something could be a very cool display for it. So of course here is the kit kneeling with its most impressive accessory, the Mega Beam Launcher from the Master Grade ReZEL Commander Type. So I was able to barely get this thing to fit spinning around the booth. As you can see as it spins around, I did have to grab the sides of my photo booth and stretch them out so that the Mega Beam Launcher wouldn't get stuck, but this is definitely where the Shezarr Jesta is going to shine. In this pose where it's planted on the ground, emphasizing the heft of the Mega Beam Launcher. While I think the net gun that you'll see in the next pose is a little bit underwhelming, the Mega Beam Launcher here is very cool. The tripod that it has a very wide range of articulation that allows you to position in a variety of different ways. You can either have the Jesta kneeling, standing, even in the air with the tripod kind of at full extension, posing the tripod as if it's kind of like floating there, aiming down at a target, which is really cool. If you really wanted to, you could probably get a second action base and mount the tripod up on a fork, but I didn't have the room for that, so I couldn't test that. In addition, you also can splay out the tripod legs to lower the Mega Beam Launcher very low, to have the Jesta posed prone firing the Mega Beam Launcher, which you can see in some promo material on the P-Bandai website, which is cool. I couldn't get it to fit in the photo booth, so so I didn't try that out, but that is something you can do. However, getting the Jesta's hands once again to cooperate with the pose was very annoying. While it was fairly easy to get the Jesta's hand to actually grip onto the Mega Beam launcher, actually getting the arms to move in a believable way was a little bit difficult without popping the hand out, and at that point getting the hand to pop back in without the fingers falling out was an exercise in futility. So yeah, this kit was a little bit annoying to get posed here, and again, the hands are kind of the Achilles heel, or rather finger, of this design. But I do think the end result is very much worth it. The Shezarr Jesta looks amazing with the Mega Beam launcher and is definitely how I'm going to pose this kit on the shelf. But this is not the only unique accessory this kit comes with. So getting the kit into the air, here it is holding the net gun one-handed, kind of directing the shield to fire its missile pods with its offhand, also having the kind of latch open up on one of its side skirts to blast out the grenades, because in addition to being a rack for the grenades, apparently the Jesta can also just launch the grenades out of the side skirt as a grenade launcher, which is kind of cool. So you're just in a kind of explosive firing pose with the net gun off to the side. So the Jesta does look pretty good in the air, and the Shezarr type is definitely meant kind of for space posing and things like that. So you will probably want to get an action base if you want to get the most out of your Shezarr Jesta. And like I said earlier, you can get some very dynamic posing out of it if you also kind of pose the Mega Beam launcher in the air as well. But with the net gun here, it doesn't necessarily look the most dynamic. You'll see it in a pose later where it's firing the net gun two-handed, and it doesn't look like the coolest thing. I really think that the net gun only works in a firing pose if you set up the entire Shezarr team in a diorama hunting down the Master Grade Phoenix Gundam. So yeah, the net gun, while I appreciate that it was included, is a little bit of a shame that it's very color inaccurate, very simple, leaving a massive seam line running down the middle of it. It doesn't necessarily look the greatest with the Jesta, and especially gets mocked by the Mega Beam launcher in terms of how cool it looks with the Shezarr Jesta. But yeah, the Shezarr Jesta can look very cool and tactical here, using its shield weapons and its side skirt mounted weapons in a way like this. So yeah, the Shezarr Jesta looks quite good in the air, doesn't necessarily look the greatest with the net gun, and in my opinion, you'll definitely want to be posing this kit with the Mega Beam launcher unless you get a couple of them again to act as a diorama so you can set up the full C team with their two net guns. So here's the kit on the ground in a preparatory pose, holding onto the handle of the shield in front of it in a defensive pose with the beam sabers. So I'm not really the biggest fan of using the beam saber with the Jesta here. I don't think it's the coolest thing ever, particularly with all of the other weapons that this kit has and with all the tactical ordnance it has. That's definitely how you're going to want to pose the Jesta to make the most out of its kind of unique characteristics. The beam saber is an overly basic weapon, and I think for a Spec Ops unit like this, you're probably not going to want to pose it with the beam saber, particularly the Shezarr Jestas. You probably want to use them with their unique characteristics and weaponry. So I'm going to leave this spinning while I get into the conclusion, but this isn't necessarily the best way to pose specifically the Shezarr Jesta. So in conclusion, the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta is mostly going to be a recolor of 2013's Master Grade Jesta, also including a modified head to have a flip down sight, kind of reminiscent of like helmet mounted NVGs, in addition to including two bonus accessories: the capture gun used by the C team, which is a very simple weapon that does require a bit of painting to get color accurate, and the Mega Beam launcher, the gun of which is taken from the Master Grade ReZEL Commander Type, and the tripod, being new for this kit, is going to be the main accessory of this kit, and is definitely where this kit is going to look best in terms of posing and shelf presence and things like that. However, this kit does have one major glaring flaw, being the kind of preformed, fully articulated hands that come on an almost advanced MS joint style runner, which is very annoying to work with and makes this kit quite difficult to get into poses. So this kit is definitely going to be for the more patient of you in terms of actually working with it and getting it into anything that looks remotely believable. In terms of the build, this kit is a Master Grade through and through, with a fully involved, detailed inner frame that looks amazing, tons of armor layering, more than I was expecting, which does kind of reflect its more elite nature compared to a lot of other Federation Grunt units, with plenty of layering and things like the head with clear parts going behind transparent orange parts to make use of the LED gimmick if you decide to get that sold separately accessory. Bit of a shame that wasn't included in here. But yeah, the build in general is quite robust, quite sturdy, and does make this kit feel very kind of complete and substantial as you are working with it, apart from the hands, which can be a bit of an issue, and the fingers do have a very big issue in terms of popping up very easily as you try to bend and articulate them. Even the usual real grade frame fix of just gently articulating all of the joints in the hand back and forth before you try to pose it doing anything doesn't really help, and even bending the fingers the first time can cause the fingers to very easily pop out. So you may need to do a bit of modification where you kind of drill down into the sockets to kind of expand them out and get the finger balls to sit more deeply inside of them more reliably and get them to fall out less easily. I did try using the Display joint strengthening pen, and it did not seem to do much in terms of actually helping the fingers stay in their sockets, which is a bit annoying. But apart from the hands, the rest of this kit is quite an excellent build, if feeling a bit dated with the inclusion of polycaps, though they do not prove to be much of an issue in this kit. In terms of aesthetics then, this kit is almost entirely color accurate. The use of color correcting stickers is fairly minimal, mostly going to be relegated to camera details, apart from those two details in the chest and a small red rectangle on the capture gun. In terms of details you need to paint in yourself, there's just a couple of minor details on the mobile suit itself, with yellow accents on the bottom of the feet and the insides of the thrusters on the backpack. You can do things like painting the clear part inside of the visor in in chrome if you know you're not going to get the LED unit for this kit, but where this gets a little bit disappointing is going to be in the capture gun, with the cylinder 4 that ostensibly holds the electromagnetic net needing to be painted in the same blue gray of the Jesta itself. I did not have that color on hand, so I used the Display Mecha Gray paint marker, and I do think it does a great job of kind of separating the parts of the weapon to make it look more complex than it actually is. But yeah, apart from that, this kit is entirely color accurate as you would expect out of a Master Grade. I do really like how it looks, being a kind of Spec Ops Super Jagan that in universe I'm pretty sure is almost new Gundam levels of performance, but yeah, this very much takes inspiration from kind of contemporary Spec Ops teams in terms of its accessories and layout and things like that, with the flip down sight resembling NVGs mounted on a helmet, and of course the beam rifle taking lots of aspects from contemporary firearms, which is very hit or miss depending on your aesthetic tastes. I think it's a little bit odd. I like certain parts of it, like the suppressor on it actually having a kind of in-universe explanation by being an accelerator for the beams, and I like the foregrip, although I do think the size of the magazine for the beam rifle as well as the EOTech hollow sight that it has on the top looking a little bit weird and kind of not congruous with the rest of the universe's aesthetic language. In general, I do really like how the Jesta looks and how it looks like, well, a more advanced, detailed kind of Super Jagan that was used for Spec Ops operations. In terms of accessories then, the Jesta Shezarr is very complete, coming with the usual layout of sword, board, and beam rifle, in addition to, of course, the new accessories that come with this kit, being the capture gun and the mega beam launcher, and some extra goodies and adapters like the action-based adapter that comes with this kit, and of course 2 standing pilot figures. So this kit does come with pretty much everything you would want to be able to get it in most of the poses you would want it to, with one major caveat: you have to deal with the hands in order to get it into those poses. So getting the hands to grip onto things like the beam saber and the handle for the shield aren't the biggest deal, but getting them into any kind of two-handed pose where you're two-handing the beam rifle, the capture gun, or the mega beam launcher can be a bit cumbersome, and the fingers will want to pop out on you, so you can make the modifications that I mentioned earlier in order to make that a little bit easier for you if you find that the fingers are popping out very easily. But you will definitely need to be very patient to get the most out of this kit with how annoying those hands are to work with. But as for the accessories, you do get pretty much everything you would expect or want with the Jesta Shezarr here. In terms of articulation, the Jesta Shezarr is mostly good on this front, sporting decent to good articulation across the board, with actually surprisingly good ankle articulation that isn't hindered by the polycaps as much as I was expecting it to. They may become a little bit loose over time, but in general the ankles did hold quite well even in a one-legged pose where I was expecting them to fail. You get fairly nice auxiliary articulation, things like the sub-arm for the shield, enabling you to kind of get it into any angle you want, and making having the hand continue to grip onto the handle relatively easy for the shield there. While the arm articulation is quite nice, again, it is hampered a little bit by the fragility of the hands. Actually getting the arms into believable poses is very much limited by how well you can get the hands to cooperate with you, which can be a bit of a pain and does limit your posing options unless you are very patient. I was struggling with this kit quite a bit to get it into most kind of believable poses, and in my opinion, it does make this kit very kind of annoying to work with, but once you get this kit in a pose that works, it looks really great, and it definitely does feel a little bit rewarding to finally get that decent looking pose after wrangling with the hands for like half an hour. So yeah, the articulation is fairly decent, but is a little bit hampered by the hands. So would I recommend this kit? It depends on how much you like the Mega Beam launcher, because the base mobile suit is mostly just going to be a recolor of the base Jesta with some NVG style flip down sights mounted onto its helmet. So if you like the color scheme, you can definitely just repaint some of the parts of the base Master Grade Jesta, and at around $45 for the base Jesta, that kit comes away with a wholehearted recommendation if you like the general aesthetics of this kit. If you specifically want the unique parts of the Shezarr Jesta for a diorama, or if you just like how it looks with either the capture gun or the Mega Beam launcher, this kit I would say is fairly worth the extra price, with the Mega Beam launcher in particular providing a hefty amount of extra plastic that does look quite good and is fairly forgiving in terms of posing. You can't get it into most angles you would want it to, and it is surprisingly versatile, being able to be used with the Jesta either prone, kneeling, standing, or in the air. So the Mega Beam launcher is definitely the kind of star of the show here in terms of the additions made with the Shezarr Jesta. But if you're not the biggest fan of specifically the Mega Beam launcher or the capture gun, I would say if you like the Jesta, just opt for the base Jesta and repaint the accent parts in the blue-gray / light blue that the Shezarr Jesta uses if you want it to have this very kind of similar color scheme. So the base Jesta, if you are a patient poser and you have the ability to carefully work with the hands of this kit, is definitely a great Master Grade and serves as a great addition to any collection, kind of rounding out the Federation Grunt list with a much more kind of elite Spec Ops unit here that is represented very well in the Master Grade. So that's my review of the Master Grade Shezarr Jesta Team B and C version. What do you think of this kit? Let me know in the comments below. If you like reviews like these, make sure to submit notification bells so you don't miss future uploads. If you like this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next time with my review of the Master Grade Gym Command Space Type. I'll see you then.